Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty Show. And today we're going to get into some house cleaning. We're going to give you some of our ad stashes and our drops and sells right before the season gets started in just 3 days. That's right. Well, I should say 2 days, right, Matt? So we've got, Thursday night coming up and Friday night game. I know we're all excited, especially after the way our college teams played. Gators had a rough one this weekend, losing to the Hurricanes. My Noles got smoked last night by Boston College, of all teams. So it's looking a little rough over there in Tallahassee. But anyway, let's get back into the NFL. And we're going to start with our ad stashes. Now, this is important depending on your format. If it's a deeper league, obviously you can grab these guys. If it's a shallower league, it's going to be a little more tricky for you. And then you also have best ball formats in there. So in best ball, I just want to get and remind people that you want as many guys on your roster that will not give you a donut during the week. So get rid of those backup quarterbacks for now, and let's get into it. All right, Matt. So we're just going to rattle off our list of players rather than talking about one guy and then making you guys wait. We're just going to rattle off our list, and then we're going to discuss the ones that we agree on and maybe disagree on. All right, Matt? So
sounds good.
Let's kick it over to you. Let's hear your ads and stashes to start. Let's start with the ads.
Okay. All right. Well, glad to be back on. And it was a rough weekend for the collegiate play. That being said, we'll just skip right on by that and get to our ads. So my top ads for the week, again, I think you mentioned it, based on your league format, your setup, how deep your bench is, you've got to manage your own thought process here, and maybe we can help you through some of those decisions between the ads and the stashes, right, Chris? So my ads to start off with, I've got Tyrone Tracy out of the Giants backfield, Jordan Mason, which is probably the top handcuff, Jaleel McLaughlin, running back in Denver. Let's see, McMillan, rookie wide receiver in Tampa Bay, Jalen Polk. Also another rookie wide receiver up in New England. Cody Parkinson, tight end in LA for the Rams, and then Tyson Chandler, the RB2 up in Minnesota. When you look at stashes, I got a couple of guys that kind of go between the ads and stashes, again, between the league setups. And I'll start with those three guys that I have that kind of go between here. Malik Washington, wide receiver in Miami. Dontavian Wicks, Green Bay wide receiver, and then Kamani Vidal, Chargers rookie running back there. And then in my fully stash mode, I've got Keaton Mitchell, running back in Baltimore, Javon Baker, wide receiver in New England, Bucky Irving, running back in Tampa Bay, and then let's see here, I've got Michael Wilson, wide receiver in Arizona, and then Marshawn Lloyd, running back in Green Bay.
All right, Nat. So those are your ad stashes. I'm going to rattle off mine then. I'll start with the ones that I agree with you. And those would be Tyrone Tracy, Jordan Mason, and Malik Washington. I think Washington there is important because depending on your format, you may be able to squeeze them onto your bench. Now, the way I like to play, whether it's dynasty or redraft, I like to fill up my bench with as many backup running backs as possible because they have the highest ceilings. But Malik Washington in particular is basically a handcuff as well to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
Yeah.
So you're looking at just a huge ceiling from the guy. And I mean, he's built maybe not as heavy as Tyreek, but his speed is pretty darn close. And yes, he's only 5'8", but I mean, Miami's shown it doesn't matter how big you are, they're going to find a way to get you the rock. And so Malik Washington, if you got a roster spot, squeeze him in there because he could definitely be worth it. I don't expect Tyreek and Jalen Waddle to both play 17 games this season. So it's just a law of averages. Nothing in particular against either of those two, just the way the NFL works. And so, yes, I agreed with you on Tyron Tracy and absolutely with Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason is owned in 28% of the sleeper leagues now. So many of you have caught on that, Elijah Mitchell is out for the season and have scooped up Jordan Mason. Now, we did get news this morning that CMC is back into practice and that Trent Williams is on the verge of signing on the dotted line. So we don't have to worry about either of those things going into Monday night, in my opinion, as of right now. I mean, CMC coming back to practice on a Friday before a Monday night game, that's good news to me, because if there was any sort of real issue for him playing Monday night, he probably would just be sitting out of practice. Right? Wouldn't you agree, Matt, on that?
Yeah.
I think McCaffrey's playing Monday night. That's really what it comes down to. But it doesn't mean that Mason is still a good stash for sure.
Yeah, I would. I mean, okay, so if you're a Christian McCaffrey owner, I'm not big on owning handcuffs. I'm not. I feel like you should hedge your bets differently. Bet on someone else's running back to go down.
Yeah, I want to own someone else's guy. Absolutely.
If you have roster space and you own, I would have Mason. I would have Mason in any, if I owned him or not, just because he's gone 2 years completely unscathed for the most part. So yeah, I'd say I'd want to own him. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Mason becomes a top 10 start at running back any week that McCaffrey is out.
Immediately. Because it's not just a guy that we think, he'll come in and fill in. Like, let's just say I listed Bucky Irving. Okay, so if Rachaad White goes down, Bucky Irving comes in. Okay, I feel pretty good about that. But not like Jordan Mason. He proved last year he can carry a load, and he can be effective carrying that load within the scheme that he's asked to play. And I would just feel just much happier having Jordan Mason fill in as opposed to more of an unknown that has not produced.
Yeah, like we're talking about in your lineups, right? Let's say you have, I don't know, Devin Singletary or one of the lower end RB2s in your lineups regularly.
Like a Jerome Ford out there, right?
Yeah, Jerome Ford. Jordan Mason's going to go, if he's starting, he's going to jump ahead of any of those guys.
Yeah.
All right. I do like Jerome Ford. So maybe Jerome Ford, we got to see how he does, how much work he actually does get week one. But a Devin Singletary type, Jordan Mason would jump him, I would say, easily. But then like Bucky Irving, Rachaad White is out. I don't know that I would really put Bucky Irving ahead of Devin Singletary. He'd be even. It'd be like a
right. Well, that's my whole point. I like the Jordan Mason over from a comfortability standpoint, right? If I lose, that's my argument to handcuff or not, right? If I don't own Rachaad White, I like Bucky Irving. If I do own him, I don't want him.
No, you don't want him. Right.
But I
want
Jordan Mason regardless. Because he instantly jumps. As soon as McCaffrey goes down, Mason immediately jumps right in and plugs in as a top 20 back, in my opinion. So and I really, really like that.
Yeah. And I feel the same way about any of like the top 3, 4, or 5 running backs in the league. Like Braylon Allen, I wouldn't mind owning him whether if I have Brees or I don't. Bijan Robinson, I'll take Tyler Algier. It's a fun name to say. I'll take Algier whether or not I have Bijan, because Bijan goes down, Algier immediately becomes a top 10 to 15 start that week. And even another guy that I didn't list down, Trey Mason, right? Trey Mason is definitely built for the first and second down role in Indy, whereas Tyler Goodson, I don't know so much. So I know that Trey Mason's banged up this week, but it's a hammy. And so I'm not actively adding him as much. I did grab him last week, but now I am with Trey Mason. I'm basically just waiting for him to be put out for this week 1. Then I can slide him onto my IR and scoop up another running back. Essentially,
yeah. Indy only holding 3 running backs. We'll talk about Jonathan Taylor on another episode, but we'll talk about that only holding 3 backs.
Yes, we'll get into that on another show, which we hopefully will be doing maybe later today. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right. So let me get to my other ads quickly. All right. Mm-hmm. And that would be Devon Veal from Denver, wide receiver, 6th round wide receiver. Samaje Perine in Kansas City now. Keaton Mitchell. Maybe did you mention Keaton Mitchell? I don't know.
No, I did. One of my stashes. I sure did. Yeah.
Keaton Mitchell, definitely. Emmanuel Wilson from the Packers.
Yeah, gotcha.
Jalen Naylor, wide receiver for the Vikings. Pierre Strong over in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And Hassan Haskins for your deeper formats. All right. Then some stashes. I've got Ricky Pearsall, Marshawn Lloyd, and Pop Douglas. So let's quickly discuss some of our ones that we agree on. Let's start with Keaton Mitchell. All right. What do we want to do? The strategy with Keaton Mitchell. For one, I'll start. I drafted him in a 14-team, 18-round draft. I got Keaton Mitchell with my 16th round pick last night. And right away after the draft, because we were just doing first come, first serve, waivers will start next week. Right away, I moved Keaton Mitchell over to my IR and scooped up my kicker. I did not draft a kicker. So that's one strategy of waiting to do it. I think most hang on to that. Now it's a little different in best ball. But Matt, what would you say with Keaton Mitchell? What are your thoughts?
Exactly. So I just did a 12-team draft in a 14-round format. I did not draft Keaton Mitchell. However, I made a couple of roster moves. I picked up Keaton Mitchell, slid him right into my IR, and then I went and picked up Tyrone Tracy.
There you go.
And that's just maximizing what my roster is able to give to me. Because, I mean, let's look, Derrick Henry is going to get the volume. We know that's going to happen. Okay. But it's very simple. It also saves Lamar from having to do any sort of goal line work, which he doesn't do a whole lot. Anyway, if something ever happens to Henry, who also had a rookie running back come in and siphon off a 50% snap share from him last year, given better offense, better situation, I like Keaton Mitchell once he returns from IR after a couple of weeks to actually be in there and take a 40% workload. I like that.
Yeah.
And then if something happens to Henry, he's the RB1 in a run-first offense.
Yeah, I like Keaton Mitchell whether or not Henry is hurt or not. I mean, we all saw last year what Keaton Mitchell can do in just 5 or 6 touches in a game. I mean, his first game last year that he played, he had what?
He was a top 10 back.
9 carries for 134 yards, something like that.
Yeah, I think he was a top 10 back for the few games that he actually played. He was a top 10 back in fantasy last year.
And he doesn't need in very limited volume is the point. And, Baltimore is a very strong contender this year, very good team. They are expected to probably be running the ball a lot in the second half of games. And Keaton Mitchell's the type of guy who is the perfect lightning to the Derrick Henry Thunder in that when they're trying to wear out teams in the third and fourth quarter and they're banging Henry up the gut. And then all of a sudden Keaton Mitchell is that lightning. It's tough to defend. We'll just put it that way. Cause then of course you have Lamar as well. And that is just a nightmare to defend. Who cares about the receivers at that point? The backfield that they have is just a nightmare. And I will also mention that in the meantime, Justin Hill is no slouch himself. Justice Hill.
Yes, sir.
He's no slouch either. He is maybe a 1/10 of a second slower than Keaton Mitchell, but that's still pretty darn fast. And so in the first 3-4 weeks of this year, I would look for Justice Hill. If you've got a little room on your roster, he's hardly owned at all, but he technically right now literally is the backup. And I expect him getting 30 to 40% of the snaps. So it's just the way Baltimore runs it. And, I like to do things where I'm picking receivers on pass happy offenses and I'm picking the running backs on the running offenses. So, Baltimore, San Diego, or the Chargers, the 49ers, those teams, they like to run it and they run it well. And the pass happy teams, those are the teams that I like to stash guys that are the wide receivers. I don't, you know what I'm saying? And so let's move on. I did want to talk about the Denver receiver room because right now, Devin Veal he's the number one ad on Sleeper right now. He's only 4% owned, but what are your thoughts on Devin Veal, Matt?
It's a wide open receiver room. I mean, we all know that Cortland Sutton was asked for in the potential 3-team trade with Ayuk. But I mean, outside of that guy, I mean that whole pass catching room is wide open. There's been no one that's really established themselves as the guy, including Cortland Sutton, because it's going to be a brand new quarterback throwing the football. So that being said, Sean Payton spoke very highly about Veal throughout the preseason and camp, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. So, I mean, there's a reason he's being picked up. If you're taking a shot, I mean, there's not a whole lot in that pass catching room I'd like to invest in with high draft capital. But if you've got the extra spot, I think, it's worth a shot. Why not? Right? Because I mean, just look at Sean, just look at his offenses in the past, especially in New Orleans where they had the most success, and guys come out of nowhere.
Absolutely. Marcus Colston. That is why I'm picking up Devin Veal, because of Marcus Colston. That is literally who I see. And then what happened with Puka Nacua last year. I mean, I know we don't have an injury to like Cortland Sutton or anybody in particular, but they did cut Tim Patrick. Okay. So,
but it's because of Veal that they're allowed to cut Patrick, right? Because of the camps and the preseason that he had, they're more comfortable letting go of Patrick, who's very versatile for them. But he's older, and he's a guy to I think that's a solid ad, absolutely. Or at least you put it under stash ad, doesn't matter.
Right.
The same thing. So
the way I did it in a couple of my leagues, like I was stashing Sean Tucker on a couple of my teams. Okay. Sean Tucker's the third running back in Tampa. And so he's truly behind Bucky Irving, right? 30% owned in Sleeper, but I'm looking at Devin Veal and I'm like, well, I can get Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker off of my taxi, and I can bring in Veal and throw him onto the taxi for now if I want. Other things, what you want to do with your taxi squad, the 4 guys on your taxi squad, you don't want those guys to be somebody that you think you could potentially cut. Okay. So like a Tyron Tracy, or I had that Saman Vaki, right, from Detroit. Okay, who is battling Craig Reynolds for the 3rd running back spot in Detroit, which is a solid spot because you get an injury to Montgomery or Gibbs and they play.
Exactly.
Detroit rotates their running backs. They're not going to give 25, 30 touches to Montgomery or Gibbs if one of the other guy goes down. That 3rd running back is going to get touches, possibly goal line touches even. So, but Simone Vaki lost out to Craig Reynolds as of now. And so rather than having Vaki on my taxi, I just went ahead and cut him because he's not as, I'd rather have somebody like Tyron Tracy or Bucky Irving sitting on my taxi squad for now. I think that there's a misconception about your taxi squad that I want to get into real quick. And a lot of people like to look at their taxi squad as putting 4 or 5 players on there that they're not going to use at all season. I don't look at that. I look at it like it's 4 or 5 extra roster spots on top of it. And I hope that I get to use them at some point during the season. All right.
Perfect. Last year I had Puka Nacua on my taxi squad. I ended up bringing him out for a couple of weeks, and then I ended up trading him. So and right now my taxi squad in one in particular dynasty league, I have a taxi squad that's built with four spots. I have a Blake Watson, Jacob Cowing, Roman Wilson, and John Michie. Those are guys. Cowing and Michie, I'm hoping explode at some point this year. Roman Wilson, I feel will at some point this year. And Blake Watson is a dart throw. I'm just waiting to see what happens.
Right. So for me, I look at I want, but I don't necessarily need in my active roster at the moment. I want them though, and I don't have plans of never using them. Right. So. Right. Exactly. Like Roman Wilson is the perfect kind of guy, and I would even consider. I don't know. Is he on the PUP or IR? I would consider taking him off the taxi and putting on to IR. But at the same time, if you're loaded at wide receiver, you can just put him down at taxi because you're very unlikely to play him at least this season. You know what I'm saying? It's tough to see a path for Roman Wilson getting 7 to 8 targets this rookie season. It's all possible for sure, but it's kind of hard to see that path happening this season, but he is a good stash for the future. Like Ricky Pearsall now with his incident in the past week, whether you want to put him on IR or taxi, you need to just look at your roster and see, is Ricky Pearsall somebody I'm actually going to play? Now, the real thing with Pearsall is he could, let's say he just misses the first 4 games. All right. Mm-hmm. But then Debo goes out in week 6. Well, Pearsall in a deeper league where you're starting 10, 11, 12 guys, Pearsall could become a start. So that's where you have to look at your taxi and the bottom of your bench. What I'm getting at ultimately is that I always want the bottom, at least 1 to 2 guys on my bench to be replaceable, to be able to be churned over and over and over. And I don't want to put those churning guys onto my taxi is what I'm getting at. So just take a look at that. We're talking about house cleaning here for you guys. We've got a couple days before the season starts, and that's what we're trying to help you with right now. Let's kick over to we talked enough about our ads and stashes. Let's get over to the drops and possible sells. Okay. So why don't you start with guys that you would just drop right now?
Oh God, guys, I would just drop. Man,
how about Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
I got like 5 sells. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
What about Clyde Edwards-Helaire? That's the main drop I have right now.
Yeah, I mean,
you can put him on the IR if you have
with no timetable of return. I would absolutely drop him. Tyler Lockett's another drop for me. I mean, he's semi-questionable coming in. JSN with a new OC. I would drop Tyler Lockett. I have quite a few sells. Drops are a little bit tougher. Okay, here's one. I mean, and this is more redraft only, right? Mm-hmm. But if you don't own James Conner and you own Trey Benson, that's a drop. That's a drop. You're not. The only sell there is to the Conner owner, so that way he knows he's got the starting running back in Arizona no matter what. Other than that, I think that's a fair drop in redraft.
in redraft, I can understand.
Yes.
However, I disagree. I would hang on to Benson was one guy I was targeting. I was hoping to land Jerome Ford or Chuba Hubbard and then get Trey Benson or Blake Corum on the backside. Same with Jonathan Brooks. So any of the 3 rookie running backs, our top 3 rookie running backs this year, I wanted to sort of pair them up with Chuba Hubbard and Jerome Ford so that I had sort of a full season's worth of a running back there with 2 spots on the bench.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for like some roster fodder to get rid of in your dynasty formats, let's see here. A.T. Perry's probably a good one, right? You could probably, if you don't have a taxi slot available, maybe someone you can drop there. Anthony Gould. You can watch him, but he doesn't need to be taking a roster spot. I mean, I know Josh Downs is banged up, but with all due respect, it's Pittman, it's A.D. Mitchell, it's JT, it's Anthony Richardson. I wouldn't. It's not someone I would clog my roster with.
How about two guys here? Tons of talent, but Treylon Burks and Quentin Johnston. Would you just drop them in Dynasty?
Yeah, I would. No, in Dynasty, I would try to get what I can for them.
What if you spammed out? If you spammed out 4th rounders to everybody in the league, that's how you know a guy has a drop. If you're in a 12-team league,
okay.
If I hit
my league and I can't get anything for him, I'm gonna drop him.
Yeah, that's clear roster fodder. Like me, honestly, I would rather own DJ Chark in Dynasty over Quentin Johnston right now, because Quentin Johnston has a starting spot. He's the at least wide receiver 3 for the Chargers, if not better. We don't know. We have to wait and see there with the Chargers how the passing attack unfolds. And I like DJ Chark in a deeper format where you want maybe an extra wide receiver just for safekeeping. Chark is a little interesting to me. But yes, Quentin Johnson and Treylon Burks they're pretty much done. I mean, they've both been surpassed on the depth charts, and it's unfortunate, but it happens. And so you gotta get rid of the clutter, and also any third or guys running backs who are battling for 3rd or 4th roster spots that didn't make it, that got cut, even if they got brought back on to the taxi squad or the practice squad of their team.
First one, Donta Foreman comes to mind.
Foreman, right? He got passed by Pierre Strong there in Cleveland.
Yep.
I don't know that Foreman is really the 1st and 2nd down banger as much anymore. I mean, Pierre Strong, I think, yes, we've looked at him as a satellite back, but if Jerome Ford were to get injured for, like, say, a high ankle sprain for 3 to 4 weeks, I would not be shocked if Pierre Strong just takes on 15 to 20 touches there in Cleveland. Yes, Foreman might get 5 touches, but that's about it, I think.
Well, I don't think he's going to see very much action. I don't. I mean, I know he was released, and then I think they re-signed him to practice.
Yeah, and they brought him back. Yeah.
If he's on practice squad, I mean, why is he on your roster?
Right. Yes. So other guys that I can come to mind right off the top of my head, like Cody Schrader, a lot of people took him because he was in the Niners backfield. He got released, picked up by the Rams, but now with the Rams backfield, I mean, you've got Kyron, Corum, and then you still have Ronnie Rivers there. So Cody Schrader's the 4th running back there. I mean, you got to have a real deep league to hang on to Cody Schrader.
Yeah, extremely deep. Yes. Extremely deep.
Now, I am in a 16-team super flex. we're in a 53-man best ball together. So there's some deeper leagues out there. But even in that 53-man best ball, like
I don't have
half the roster is defensive players. So you really only have like 25 to 30 offensive players. There really isn't that much room for a dude like Cody Schrader.
That's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct.
All right.
I do have some other guys that are worthy of a roster spot. They're just guys that I don't think their value is going to get much higher than it is right now at this point. So they're guys that I would look to sell.
Go ahead and throw them to us, Matt.
You want to talk some sells? All right. So just to list them off real quick, and I know one of them might ruffle some feathers, but let's go with Joe Mixon, George Pickens, Mike Williams, Xavier Worthy, and Michael Pittman.
Okay. Well, I like the Pittman one. Xavier Worthy is very interesting, but I like it because let's say, so Xavier Worthy in particular, he's had a huge offseason of hype, right? Starting with the combine, running that 4.21, everything has just been steamrolling forward for him, right? And now Hollywood gets hurt. It's like the perfect storm for him, right? He should be going out and having 5 for 150 and 2 touchdowns on Thursday night, right? But what if he only gets 1 catch for 8 yards and then 1 jet sweep for 3 yards? Then what happens to his value? Then you're stuck with him. And in a redraft, that's trouble. In Dynasty, not so much. I mean, Hollywood's only got a 1-year deal. There's plenty of time for Xavier Worthy to learn the offense and not become Sky Moore. Okay. But it's not a bad time to flip him for a 25 first that is mid. You know, so somebody who thinks that they're a contender, but not really, they might be willing to give you their first. And that would be something I would definitely entertain.
Yeah. I mean, let's look at Rishi Rice's suspension, probably not happening right now. I mean, and that's what really pumped up his value and dropped Rice's value. So like right now, in my opinion, if you're still drafting and can get Rishi that late, you got to take him. You absolutely got to take him. I think if you can sell Worthy now before it starts, I think you'll be a lot happier than if you wait.
Yes,
and sell him later. So that's
I can give you the perfect example. Perfect example with Rice and Worthy last night. I took Rice in the 4th round of my 14-team league, which was a round or 2 ahead of his current ADP of 70. All right. But 4th round to me, totally where he should be going right now. And then 2 or 3 rounds later, I took Chris Godwin over Xavier Worthy. Even though I had Mahomes, I didn't want to double stack. And then Chris Godwin, I just see as a much safer parked asset for me as my wide receiver 4. Versus Xavier Worthy, who, like we just said, we don't know for sure. Hollywood will be back, and you already got Kelsey there. You got Rashee Rice. They've got their roles. Xavier Worthy really could just be a guy who's running routes, and you don't know which week to start. He could only have 3 or 4 games this year where he really is startable. In other weeks, he's getting you less than 5 points. So that's not somebody you really want to be having to start on a consistent basis. So
yeah, actually, I thought initially, especially as we went into the rookie draft season, that Xavier Worthy was the safer bet over A.D. Mitchell. And now I have Pittman as one of my sells because I think A.D. Mitchell is going to be a bigger asset than I initially thought. I think he'll be a little bit more consistent than Xavier Worthy is actually going to be. So that's why I've got Pittman listed as a sell. I think he's going to have a decent first week, but I would sell him right now when everyone thinks he's going to be the target monster he's been for the last few years. So I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I don't. I think JT is going to get a lot of run. I think you saw it on that first drive that AR played. What was that, a couple of weeks, or in the preseason finale against New York? Was it New York? Who'd they play against?
Indy? I know they played Denver
No.
in week 1. I
No,
can't
it
remember.
was in the second or third week. Either which way, Anthony Richardson led a drive down, and then he threw a pick six or a pick. Yeah, pick six on the next drive. Either which way.
I remember that.
First drive, AD got 3 looks and a touchdown. I think you're going to see a lot more of that, and I think you're going to see a lot of running. So I think Pittman that's why he's a higher sell right now. And actually, there was a trade just went down in our league for Michael Pittman, or in one of our leagues, in which a first rounder was handed over, and I would much rather be on the first rounder side.
Yeah, I know which trade you're talking about. I agree. I like getting rid of Pittman for that. It essentially was, I think, a first and a third, roughly. There was a couple other pieces in there, but I liked getting the first rounder in that particular deal for sure.
I felt like he absolutely smoked that deal, for especially the guy who got Pittman. He doesn't come off draft capital very easily, and he doesn't usually make bad deals. I think he made a bad deal.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah, Pittman is just a guy, hit limited ceiling. I don't know that he gets the 140 or 150 targets, whatever he had last year. Again, last year
he's a beefed up Edelman.
Yes, last year he had Gardner Minshew throwing him the ball. And Gardner Minshew definitely had way more pass attempts last year than what we're going to see from Anthony Richardson this season.
Plus, Anthony Richardson's a big play passer. He's much better with his deep ball, and his skill set opens up the deep ball. That's why I feel like Pittman's targets are going to go down. That short to intermediate stuff that Gardner Minshew fed him last year, not going to be available like it was last year. I don't believe so.
I agree. So sell Pittman, buy AD Mitchell.
Yes.
There you go.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you can buy AD Mitchell though. Because if I'm owning him right now, I want to sit on that and see what comes up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Well, any other guys you want to quickly mention?
I will mention Pickens because I know that he's been. A lot of people want to focus on him. He's got decent capital as it applies to ADP. I just want everyone to remember Drake London. Just remember Drake London. Okay? Just remember Drake London.
Yep.
Remember Kyle.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's probably what we're going to end up seeing from George Pickens. I know we all want to see the 1,200 yards, 1,300 yard season, but more realistically, even without them trading for Ayuk, you're still looking at a 900 to 1,000 yard season from Pickens. Maybe he scratches the surface of 8+ touchdowns, maybe. And that's just because Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields they're both better quarterbacks than Desmond Ridder. And Pickens is, I want to say what Pickens could become is what AJ Brown was able to do in Tennessee under Arthur Smith. And that's if Pittsburgh's able to get the run game going and then do some play action. But what you're going to see is more, you're not going to see a consistency from him. If you guys remember, AJ Brown wasn't very consistent in Tennessee. He had huge spike weeks and then down weeks. And that's what you can expect from Pickens, I think, this season. So that's where I'm at on it. It's real hard for me to squint and see a 1,200+ yard season from Pickens this season. So maybe capitalize on the hype with Pickens. You could easily package Pickens plus to get up to a higher end wide receiver. That'd be something I would be looking at entertaining. I did do a deal a couple weeks ago that sort of could be looked at as contrary to this, but I traded Jalen Waddle for Pickens in a second. But that's a best ball league. So best ball is different. I don't mind Pickens at all in a best ball,
Right.
especially one where you've got, 6-7 good wide receivers. Pickens fits best ball perfectly. But in a lineup league, Pickens is going to be somebody that's frustrating, especially in redraft, those teams where you grab Pickens as your first, second wide receiver because you waited on wide receiver, and then you got George Pickens as your top guy. I mean, that's going to be frustrating for you because I do not see George Pickens in an Arthur Smith offense as a legitimate number one wide receiver. So
no, I totally agree. And since I'm wearing the shirt, I'll go ahead. I would trade Pickens plus for some Tank Dell. Tank's going to have a massive week. And I understand he's probably going to fall on our list of week one sells, or at least some people's week ones of sells, because he's going to have that big a week because Indy secondary is trash. And they're going to focus on Nico, but they're not going to be able to stop Tank because Diggs is yesterday's news.
I think that week one matchup there, Houston-Indy, is probably the best game on the noon slate game.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I hope it's as high scoring as I foresee it to be.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's all we've got for you today. And we're going to get into another video here shortly. We're going to try and bang out as many as we can here right before the season starts, get you guys all set up and cleaned house before the season gets going. All right. Now, before we leave, I want to remind you to smash the like and subscribe. Check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. Join us, get in the chat there. It's just $1 a month. $3 a month for the rankings. Very inexpensive. Just support the cause here. Get us rolling. Keep the show positive. And, well, we just thank you for joining today. We're out.